welcome to the Rule of Carnage Kickstarter Wednesday Roundup, where I'm going to go through what's been coming out on Kickstarter over the last week that are larger scale Kickstarter tabletop game appropriate. We've got a couple of interesting projects this week, the usual run of STL files and a couple of games. So hopefully you'll find something interesting in there. So first up is I Am Ronin First Wave by Alfred Chambara. Now, it's a really interesting project. I don't know how it's going to turn out, where it's going to go, but it's well worth having a little look just for the sheer sort of unusualness of what's going on in the project. So it's a STL file miniatures campaign, but it has attached a skirmish game that appears to be super narrative, and it might end up being so focused in that it looks like a first sort of big design project. It might suffer from a bit of overrulesing, but it looks like if it works, it would be a pretty interesting tabletop experience. So it's based on some sort of more old school martial art tropes where you've got a one or another warrior who travels from place to place. There's a map that looks very Mighty Empires. And you're having encounters and situations and battles defined by which of the stance miniatures you've got in place for your guy at that particular time. It sounds borderline crazy. The miniatures look great, and I think it's well worth a look at just if you fancy some interesting samurai Ronin style minis. But if the game itself actually works, it could be a really interesting narrative heavy small skirmish game borderline RPG experience. So yeah, take a look at that one. Just give yourself 5 minutes to have a look at it and see what you think about what's going on there. So second of all is another game slash minis STL project, and it's Punk Apocalyptic Radiated Faction by Bad Roll Games. So much as you probably might have grasped there, this is a post-apocalyptic skirmish level game set in a sort of irradiated Badlands world. They just releasing a new faction with a set of minis. The minis all look interesting. If you're playing any sort of post-apocalyptic skirmish game, this is on a test, anything of that sort of ballpark. I think that the miniatures would slot in very nicely. There's a huge range of them. They've not just got this faction, but a whole set of previous factions that are available on the Kickstarter. And it might be that the game system that they've got attached there also looks like it's a fairly solid, small warband, post-apocalyptic, scenario-driven game. So give that one a look if you're interested in any kind of roving post-apocalyptic wasteland warfare, and why wouldn't you be? Next up, we've got a minis accessories project, and that is Magnetic Boxes 2.0 by Safe and Sound. So what this is a set of, very much as is implied by the title, magnetic boxes. They look like sci-fi bunkers and buildings. They're designed so that they're magnetized, depending on your pledge level, all round the inside of the box. And you can pop your minis that have got magnetized bases straight into the box, on the walls, on the floors, on the ceiling, move them around very safely, and then even use those boxes as a little bit of terrain for the sci-fi 40k sort of game that you might be playing. It also comes with pledge levels for magnetic bases. They've got levels quite nicely for solid scenic bases as well as hollow slotter bases. And yeah, if you're magnetizing your minis, looking for some extra pre-magnetized boxes that aren't big old toolboxes or something similar, could be useful. Little looking on that one. A neat little accessory for transporting your armies from game to game. So first up for this week's crop of minis-based campaigns, we've got Hell's Minions, a demonic fantasy football team by Devil Inside Productions. Now, there's often one or another Blood Bowl related team cropping up on Kickstarter at any given time, and this is this week's shot. It's quite an old school style modeling. I think it's best suited for playing an ogre space team, but there are options to upgrade to play as halflings or goblins. It's a neat little set of miniatures. It's quite old school if you enjoy that sort of style. And if you're looking for something a bit out there for your Blood Bowl team, it's a simple little pickup, and the models look pretty decent. First of a couple of non-STL terrain campaigns we've got on this week is Vogel Models present Shack Me Up by Shock Horror Vogel Models. So what this is a sort of a set of tin corrugated iron shacks designed to be stackable, so you can create a tower of shacks. So this would work quite well for sort of shanty towns, ghettos, sort of current era or post-apocalyptic gritty realness. They look pretty neat. They seem to be modular. The price is reasonable for they sell in towers, so I think one tower would do for a small game. You can either stack them up or scatter them around, and I think you can go all the way up to 3 or 4 towers. It would fill a pretty large table of a sort of set of favelas or something of that nature for a modern era game. So, well worth a look at if you're gaming in sort of modern or near modern era 28mm miniatures gaming. Second of our non-STL file terrain campaigns this week is MDF laser cut half timbered houses for war games by Products for War Games. So I probably don't need to tell you too much about what the project is based on that description. It is some MDF cut half timbered buildings for 28mm heroic scale miniatures war games. As normally with MDF campaigns, the terrain is very, very reasonably priced, and you get an absolute shed load of the stuff. I think even the lower levels, you would happily put out a small to medium-sized village or town on the tabletop. So if you're playing anything that's sort of medieval or fantasy era set, particularly in sort of Western Europe, this would happily fill out any decent-sized tabletop on even the mid-range pledge levels. So on to this week's crop of STL campaigns. First up is The Mines of Pringar by Stephen Nichols. So this is a set of interior terrain for a dwarven Tolkien-esque mine of some kind. It'd probably be more appropriate for smaller skirmish games that might be set in such an area. So it's a little bit niche. You'd be hard pressed to fill a large tabletop with it, but there's some very pretty bits and pieces. It's nicely designed, very sort of dwarven, hard edged, but intricately designed terrain. So if you've got some games that would end up benefiting from being set in such an area, it's a campaign well worth looking at. Next up is Wizards and Beasts by Cosmondo. Again, this is another STL file, which, unsurprisingly from the name of the campaign, is some wizards and some beasts. What's interesting here is that you have the option to combine a range of different wizards with a range of different beasts. So you'd be looking for a large scale game for these to be hero miniatures, generals, leaders of the army, but it gives you a very nice bespoke set of creatures and wizards and sorcerers, necromancers, etc., you can combine in a range of ways quite neatly and easily. So it can save you having to worry about, what's my wizard going to be riding this week. You could very happily recreate the same wizard across a whole bunch of beasties and have them set up for a whole range of options. Yeah, give that one a little look at. And again, with STL files, there's quite a wide range of minis available there. You can always put them to one side, pull them out when you need them. So next up is 3D Models Big Collection by ZLOP. So yeah, that title isn't an exaggeration. This is a large collection of 3D modeled terrain, scatter terrain elements, larger terrain elements. There's something there for almost every system that you could possibly think of, setting, era. You could fill multiple tabletops with the pledges available here. If you're in any way interested in picking up some STL files for terrain or setting on your tabletops, there's almost certain to be something for you in this campaign. Take a look at it. There's a range of pledge levels, different collections, options. You don't have to pick up everything that's in there. But, you know, I would say if you're thinking of looking at it, it's probably worth picking up some extra options just to, as always, file them away, pull them out when you need them. There's such a range on this campaign that you could, you know, back that, and that could be pretty much all the STL train files you'll need for the foreseeable future. Yeah, check that one out for a range of tabletop settings and terrain and dressing and such like. So next up is something much more small scale, Farm of Horrors by Jamie Court. This is just a handful of STL files, quite cartoony in their style, and it's a series of farm bits and pieces coming in mundane and haunted versions. So you've got a normal scarecrow and the haunted scarecrow, some normal corn and haunted corn. It's going to be a niche set of options. I'm not saying that you're going to pull these models out for every game you ever play, but when you do come across a situation where they're going to slot right in, there's not a lot else out there that's going to fulfill this particular area. So yeah, if you've got a lot of files, you've got a lot of things stocked up, and you're looking for something a little unusual to fill out some niche corners of your collection, this could really be worth a look. If you think you're likely to play some Halloween style games that are a little bit unusual, either for this Halloween or for next, give it a look. There's some interesting bits and pieces there. They're very nice designs, a lot of character, and a lot of interest in them. So yeah, give that one a look over. So next up is The Unknown Tanker by Night Sky Miniatures, and this is 3D printable STL files for Russian and Finnish armored vehicles, World War II in 1:56 scale. If you think that that might possibly be of some interest to you, then I guarantee you this campaign is going to be a lot of interest to you. They have a massive range of options and files for accurate World War II vehicles in that scale. So a sort of Flames of War area play, but anybody who's interested in World War II historic armored vehicle combat of this area, of that era, the campaign is absolutely jammed with options and files. I strongly recommend you give it a look. It's not a campaign, a style of miniature that's going to come up over and over and over, and these guys have absolutely definitely done the work and put the effort in. And I think that if it's not for you, it's not going to be for you, but if it is for you, this campaign is going to be absolutely perfect for you. So yeah, check it out, give it a look. So first of a couple of pay what you want STL terrain campaigns this week is The Cottage by Tabletop Terrain. Really, there's not a lot of explanation to give here. It's an STL file for a cottage, and it is pay what you want. The cottage looks nice. It's quite rickety, overhangy looking. So anywhere from sort of Middle Europe, medieval era onwards. It's got a possibly a little bit of a creepy vibe to it, but it would sit quite happily in a small village or even town setting. And yeah, it's a pay what you want campaign, so it's going to be good value, and it's a nice looking cottage that's going to be handy for any time that you want to fill out any sort of medieval village town setting for skirmish games, large games, RPGs. Yeah, give that one a look. Last of all this week, another pay what you want campaign for a 3D printable wealthy Roman villas by 3D Printing Samurai. Again, very much what it says on the tin. This is a campaign for STL files for some nice looking Roman villas. Again, it's pay what you want, so you're guaranteed to get whatever you consider to be good value. If you're playing a Roman era set skirmish game, there's not a massive amount of options for terrain. So I would suggest that if you are playing, or you're thinking of playing, or you're interested in playing anything roughly in that sort of gangs of ancient Rome style era setting, give this one a look. It's got a range of decent options. The model's very nice looking, and it worked very well for any sort of skirmish game set in that general era. So if you're playing or thinking of playing something set in that era, I'd strongly suggest picking this one up. Available for however much you think it's worth, as little as $1. I don't think you go far wrong on that. So thanks. That's been another weekly roundup from Rule of Carnage on Kickstarter. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope we've given you a few ideas, a few projects you might consider picking up. And we'll see you next time. Bye.